people into the country illegally. That is amazing. Honourable, you
television network. This is a show where we bring you news, events, and stories from across the world. Here we ensure that real on-time news are packaged for the viewing pleasure of the people. And I will be doing this with Anita Obari. Thank you, Anita, for joining me.
Thank you, too.
And going to our headlines for today, this one is coming from Burkina Faso. We are not enemies of French people. This is coming from Captain Tario. And from Mali, terrorist attacks passengers boat in army bases, killed 64 people. And from Niger, U.S. military repositions troop in Miami.
From Ethiopia, soldiers accused of killing civilians in Amara region. And from Gabon, military government appoints Sima as prime minister of its transitional government. And from North Korea, government unveils first tactical nuclear attack submarine.
This and many more stories we'll be looking at when we return from the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is International Tit Bits on Atlantic Television Network. And now the details. Burkina Faso is not an enemy of French people, said Captain Ibrahim Traoré, transitional president, following a coup d'etat in an interview broadcast Wednesday evening by Radio Television du Burkina Public. We are not enemy with the French people. It is a policy of those who run French which posed a problem in Africa. So as long as the status is not in an imperialist spirit, there is no problem. He said in an interview recorded on August 31st, we must agree to look at each other as equal, and we must agree to review all our cooperation, he added, without remanding it. He criticized France for having given independence and placed people at the head of a certain state. According to him, we have led people to sign a lot of agreements which prevent us from developing, adding that imperialist states are not just France. There are others, he said without quoting them. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who came to power almost a year ago through a coup d'etat, also questioned the effectiveness of the presence of French soldiers in Burkina Faso as part of the anti-jihadist fight, which he demanded the departure in July.
Attacks on an army base and a passenger boat on the Niger River in northern Mali on Thursday by suspected jihadists killed 64 people, a Malian official said. The two separate attacks targeted a Timbuktu boat on the Niger River and on army position at Bamba in the northern Gao region, with a provisional toll of 49 civilians and 15 soldiers killed, according to a statement. It did not specify how many died in each assault, but the assaults were claimed by a group affiliated to Al-Qaeda. Earlier, the Malian army said on social media that the boat was attacked around 11 GMT by armed terrorist groups. The vessel plying an established route between cities along the river was targeted by at least 3 rockets which aimed at its engines, the operator Comagne said separately. The vessel was immobilized on the river and the army are evacuating passengers. A Komanev official said, speaking on condition of anonymity.
The Pentagon is repositioning some troops and equipment within Niger and will withdraw a small number of non-essential personnel out of an abundance of caution, U.S. official told reporters on Thursday. The first major American military movement in Niger since a coup in July. The official, who spoke on condition of anonymity, declined to say how many personnel would be departing and how many were repositioning within Niger from the Airbus 101 in Niamey, the capital, to the Airbus 201 in the city of Agadez. Before this movement, there were 1,100 troops in the West African country. This consideration represents prudent military planning to safeguard U.S. assets while continuing to address the threat of violence, extremism in the region, one of the officials said. This does not change our overall forces posture in Niger, and we continue to review all opinion as we assess a way forward, the official added. The movement of U.S. assets has been coordinated with and approved by the appropriate authorities.
Ethiopian soldiers killed more than 70 civilians and looted properties in a town in Amhara, multiple witnesses have claimed. The killings took place in Majete, a rural town in northeastern Ethiopia, after 2 weeks of heavy fighting between federal soldiers and the Fano and Amhara militia. The alleged atrocities occurred after Ethiopian troops occupied the town on 3rd September. Survivors who spoke to a journalist said the victims were unarmed farmers. As soon as the federal soldiers swept into the town, they conducted house-to-house searches, said Yesanesh, a 29-year-old woman whose 2 younger brothers were killed. They came to our village late afternoon. They asked me and my family where we hid our weapons and threatened to make us hand over the weapons to them. We told them that we are innocent farmers and we don't have weapons. When they found no weapon after searching the house, they rounded up my 2 brothers alongside the young men of our village and shot them all in the head.
Gabon's military government, which seized power in a coup last week, appointed a former opposition leader, Raymond Ndong Sima, as the prime minister of its transitional government. Sima, a 68-year-old economist, was an outspoken critic of the President Ali Bongo, who was removed by the military officers on August 30th. He served as Bongo's prime minister from 2012 to 2014, then resigned and ran against him for president in 2016 and against as part of an opposition coalition this year. His appointment, announced on state TV on Thursday, was made in the degree by the new strongman General Briggs Oligui Obuema, who was sworn in as the interim president on Monday. In his inauguration speech, Oligui promised to hold free, transparent, and credible election to restore civilians' rule, but did not give a time frame. Bongo, in power since 2009, has succeeded his father's Omar Bongo, who ruled the Central African oil producer for 42 years. The family dynastic rule has created widespread disconnect, with critics saying the Bongos did little to share Gabon's wealth with its 2.3 million people.
North Korea has launched its first operational tactical nuclear attack submarine and assigned it to the fleet that patrols the waters between the Korean Peninsula and Japan, state media said on Friday. Submarine number 841, named Hero Kim Kon-ok after a North Korean historical figure, will be one of the main underwater offensive means of the naval force. of North Korea leader Kim Jong-un said at a launch ceremony on Wednesday. Analysts say the vessel appears to be a modified Soviet-era Romeo-class submarine which North Korea acquired from China in the 1970s and began producing domestically. Its design with 10 launch tube hatches showed it was most likely armed with ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, analysts said. But such weapons won't add much value to the North. More robust land-based nuclear forces based its submarines because rather its submarines may not survive as long during a war, said Van Depen, a former U.S. government weapons expert who works with a 38 North project in Washington. When this thing is field deployed, it's going to be quite vulnerable to Allied anti-submarine warfare, he said. So I think from a sort of hand-handed military standpoint, this doesn't make a lot of sense.
China has in recent weeks widened existing curb on the use of phones by state employees, telling staff at some central government agencies to stop using their Apple mobile at work, to source familiar with the matter said. Against a backdrop of tension between Belgium and Washington, the extension of the ban imposed more than 2 years ago signaled growing challenges for the U.S. company, which rivals heavily on China or revenue growth and manufacturing. Staff in at least 3 ministries and government bodies were told not to use the phone at work, said the source. He declined to be named due to the sensitivity of the situation. One of the sources said they had not yet been given a deadline to seize these phones. Apple shares were down over 3% in early trading on Thursday after earning 3.6% lower in the previous section, with China's move to ban the use of iPhones by certain officials, was face reported. Apple's and China's State Council Information Office, which handle media inquiries on behalf of the government, did not immediately respond to the request for the comments.
Torrential rain deluged Hong Kong on Friday, leading to widespread flooding across the densely packed city, submerging streets, shopping malls, and metro stations as authorities shut schools and asked workers to stay at home. The Chinese Special Administrative Region saw the highest hourly rainfall since records began 140 years ago. Hong Kong Observatory reported rainfall of 158.1 millimeters between 11 p.m. HKT on Thursday and midnight on Friday. The Weather Bureau issued the highest black rainstorm warning and said more than 200 millimeters of rainfall was recorded on Hong Kong's main island, Kowloon, and the northeastern part of the city's new territories since Thursday night. The trough of low pressure associated with the remnant of Typhoon Haikui has brought torrential rain to the coast of Guangdong since Thursday, the Weather Bureau said. Extreme conditions are expected to last until at least noon on Friday. Hong Kong's stock exchange will not open on Friday morning if the black rainstorm warning is still in place at 9 a.m., the exchange said. City leader John Lee said he was very concerned about the severe flooding in most parts of the territory and had instructed all departments to respond with all-out efforts.
With its millions of visitors every year and the buses supply trucks, noodle shops, and French magnates, Japan's Mount Fuji is no longer a peaceful pilgrimage site it once was. Now authorities has enough said the number of hikers trekking up the world-famous volcano night and day is dangerous and an ecological embarrassment. Mount Fuji is screaming, the governor of the local region said last week. Hailing its region's importance and its inspiration to activities in 2013, UNESCO added an internationally recognized icon of Japan to its World Heritage List, but as it happened in a place such as Beggars in Belgium or Rico de Janeiro Sugaru Mountain, The designation has been both blessing and a curse. Visitors numbers more than doubled between 2012 and 2019 to 5.1 million, and that's just for Yamashai's prefecture. The main starting point is not just during the day that the stream of the people touch through the back volcanic drift or one way up to 3,776 meters mountain.
Scientists in Israel have created a model of a human embryo from stem cells in the laboratory without using sperm, eggs, or a womb, offering a unique glimpse into the early stages of embryonic development. The model resembles an embryo at day 14 when it acquires internal structures, but before it lays down the foundations for body organs, according to the team at Israel's Weizmann Institute of Science. The scientists' work was published in the journal Nature on Wednesday after a preprint came out in June during the International Society for Stem Cell Research's annual meeting in Boston. The Israeli team emphasized that they were a long way from being able to create an embryo from scratch. The question is, when does an embryo model become considered an embryo? When that happens, we know the regulations. At the moment, we are really far from that point, said team leader Jacob Hanna. However, they said the work could open the door to new ways to test the effect of drugs on pregnancies, better understand miscarriages and genetic diseases, and perhaps even to grow transplant tissues and organs. They are not identical. There are differences from human embryos, but still, this is the first time. If you open an atlas or a textbook, you can say, yeah, I can really see the similarity between them, said Hannah.
Charles III marked his first year as king on Friday. Here are 5 key moments from the last 2 months. Inaugural address: Charles succeeded his mother's Queen Elizabeth II immediately after the death at the age of 96 on September 8, 2022. He appeared visibly moved in his first televised address, paying tribute to her record-breaking 70-year-old reign and promising lifelong service. To my darling Mama, as you began your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want to simply say this: thank you, he said. Charles conferred the title of Prince of Wales to his dearest son and her Prince William, and expressed his love for younger son Harry and his wife Meghan, who left the royal fold in 2020. The king has been at his mother's bedside as she passed away at Balmoral in northeast Scotland, then returned to London to greet crowd outside Buckingham Palace who gathered to pay their respects. He told the UK during the 10 days mourning period before his mother's late funeral on September 19. Charles made his first Christmas race to the UK and the Commonwealth on December 25th, continuing a tradition that began in 1932.
Spain's President Pedro Sanchez has announced that he tested positive for COVID-19 on Thursday and will not be able to attend the G summit in New Delhi. President Sanchez said that he was feeling fine, adding that Spain would be represented at the G20 summit by First Vice President Nadia Calvino Santamaria and Foreign Minister José Manuel Albares. This afternoon, I have tested positive for COVID and will not be able to travel to New Delhi for the G20 summit. I feel fine. Spain will be magnificently represented by the First Vice President and Minister of Economic Affairs and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, EU and Cooperation, he wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter. President Sanchez joins Russia's Vladimir Putin and China's Xi Jinping as a third world leader to withdraw from the summit. The G20 Leader Summit will be held in the national capital on September 9 to 10. More than 30 heads of state and top officials from the European Union, Invited guest countries and 14 heads of international organizations are expected to attend.
Cuban authorities have arrested 17 people on a charge related to a human trafficking ring that allegedly lure young Cuban men to fight in Ukraine with the Russian military. Cuba's foreign ministry said earlier this week that the authorities were working to dismantle the network which operates in Cuba and Russia to facilitate Cubans joining the war against Ukraine. As a result of the investigations, 17 people have been arrested so far, among them the internal organizers of these activities, Casa Rodriguez, a colonel and Cuba's Interior Ministry said late on Tuesday on TV program. Rodriguez did not name any of those accused of participating in the ring, but said the group's leader relied on 2 people residing on the island to recruit Cubans to fight in exchange for payment on behalf of the Russia in Ukraine. Cuban prosecutor Jose Luis Leyes said those involved in the scandal could be punished with up to 30 years in prison, a life sentence or death penalty, depending on the severity and the type of crimes, which range from human trafficking, fighting as mercenaries, and hostile action against a foreign state.
France's Job Administrative Court has upheld a government ban on the wearing of traditional abaya, long and loose garments worn by some Muslim women in public schools, dismissing complaints that the ban was discriminatory and could incite hatred. The State Council, France's highest court for complaints against public authorities, said on Thursday that it had rejected a request for an injunction against the ban. Ahead of the court's ruling on Thursday, France's Council of the Muslim Faith, established to represent Muslims before the government, warned that banning the garment could create an elevated risk of discrimination and said it was considering lodging its own court complaint with the council. French President Emmanuel Macron's government announced last month that it was banning the abaya and gamis, also a long, loose-fitting garment worn by some Muslim men in schools, claiming the attire broke the rules on secularism in education. Muslim headscarves have already been banned on the grounds that they constitute a display of religious affiliation. Actors for the Rights of Muslims, an association representing Muslims, filed a motion with the State Council seeking an injunction against the ban, saying it was discriminatory and could incite hatred against Muslims.
A U.S. citizen has been accused of trying to kidnap his 4-year-old son and illegally cross a Russian border with him, prosecutors in the Russian region of Kaliningrad said Thursday. The 35-year-old man, whose name was not released, wanted to live with the child outside of Russia without obtaining the consent of the baby's mother. Russian investigative committee department in the region said in a statement on Telegram. A criminal case has been launched against the man who arrived in the Kaliningrad region on July 27 to meet his 4-year-old son, who is a citizen of the Russian Federation. The statement added no charge has been filed. Under the pretext of spending time together, the man took his son in a car to the Mononoskiv urban district near the Polish border before he made an attempt to illegally cross the state border through a wooden and swamping area, the statement said. Officers stopped the man at the borders in Kaliningrad, a semi-excave on the Baltic Sea in the Russian watermost region, the statement said. At the time, a district court in the eastern city of Kaliningrad also was considering a civil case to determine the child's place of residence, the region said.
Russian authorities are holding local elections this weekend in occupied parts of Ukraine in an effort to tighten their grip on territories Moscow illegally annexed a year ago and still does not full control. The voting for Russian-installed legislatures in the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia regions begins Friday and concludes Sunday. It has already been denounced by Kyiv and the West. It constitutes a flagrant violation of international law, which Russia continues to disregard, the Council of Europe, the continent's foremost human rights body, said this week. Kyiv echoed the sentiment, with the parliament saying in a statement that the balloting in areas where Russia conducts active hostilities poses a threat to Ukrainian lives. Lawmakers urged the other countries not to recognize the results of the vote. For Russia, it is important to go on with the voting to maintain the illusion of normalcy, despite the fact that the Kremlin does not have full control over the annexed regions, political analyst Abbas Galiumov said. The Russian authorities are trying hard to pretend that everything is going according to plan. Everything is fine. And if everything is going according to plan, then the political process should go according to plan, said Galiamov, who worked as a speechwriter for Russian President Vladimir Putin when Putin served as prime minister.
Former President Donald Trump made his first public comment about the effort to bar him from the ballot under the 14th Amendment on Thursday, describing it as a nonsense and election interferences. This is like a banana republic, Trump said in an interview with a conservative radio host, Dan Bongino, and what they are doing is called election interference. Now that the 14th is nonsense, the issue centered on the clause in the 14th Amendment that says no person should hold elected office who engage in an insurrection or rebellion against the U.S. Already now, Hampshire, Arizona, Michigan, and most recently, Colorado, who are preparing for such challenges to Trump's eligibility to be on the 2024 presidential ballot. Trump said it was a continuation of election interference in the radio interview. Trump, who still insists they won in 2020 and tried to get his own vice president to deny Joe Biden's victory, also played down the June 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, saying the real insurrectionists were the people that insurrected on the elections and rigged the election. This is International Tit Bits on Atlantic Television Network. We go on a short break.
From the line across the ocean to the land beyond the mountains, through the Sahara, we bring
Every day, our lives are changed by history.
Welcome back. This is International Tit Bits on Atlantic Television Network, and now to the rest of our stories. Barrier construction along the United States southern border has damaged sensitive ecosystem, public lands, and indigenous cultural sites, a report by the non-partisan government research agency has found. Released to the public on Thursday, the 72-page report met the first independent effort from the Government Accountability Office to assess the destruction caused by the building and border wall. It describes government's contractors blasting a sacred indigenous burial with explosive and leaving a mountainside in danger of the collapse, among other incidents of harms. The report focuses on a period from 2017 through January 2021 during the administration of former President Donald Trump, while the documents never mentioned Trump by name. It explained that federal authorities at the time relied on national security provision to bypass existing protections. Federal agency built about 450 miles of the barriers along the U.S. west-east border to expand its construction the way environmental and other laws, the GAO said in its summary.
The United States has announced a new $600 million security assistance package for Ukraine that includes demolition munitions, mine clearing equipment, artillery shells, and other weaponry, just a day after pledging $1 billion in new military and humanitarian aid for Kyiv. Announced on Thursday, the $600 million follows after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced during a visit to Ukraine on Wednesday that Washington would provide $1 billion in military and humanitarian aid for Kyiv, including depleted uranium munition for U.S.-made M1 Abrams tanks that are expected to be delivered to Ukraine later this year. The latest $600 million will support Ukraine's battlefield needs and demonstrate unwavering U.S. support for Ukraine, the Pentagon said in a statement on Thursday. But the military assistance will not immediately arrive on the battlefield as it falls under the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, through which Washington procures equipment from the defense industry or partners rather than drawing from U.S. military stocks.
Eric Adams, the Democratic mayor of New York, sounded the alarm this week over the financial strain the city faces as thousands of asylum seekers arrive each month, many sent by the Republican governor after crossing the southern U.S. border. This issue will destroy New York City, Adams said Wednesday evening at a public meeting where he responded to residents' questions. He said 10,000 migrants are arriving each month from all over the globe and that 111,000 people have shut down since Greg Abbott, the Republican governor of Texas, began sending migrants to New York abroad buses. We have to feed, clothe, house, educate the children, wash their laundry, give them everything they need, health care, he said. In addition to New York, Abbott has been sending migrants to other cities governed by Democrats, including Washington and Los Angeles. Other Republicans, governors, and other Democrats have followed suit and began transporting migrants out of their jurisdiction.
A rescue operation is underway to save an American carving instructor who fell ill a week ago while more than 3,400 feet deep in a cave in southern Turkey. Mark DK, 40, fell ill on August 31st while on an exploration of the Mokav cave in the Taurus Mountains and has been unable to return to the surface since, according to the volunteer group New Jersey Initial Response Team. DK is the chief of the group, which specializes in cave and mine rescue, as well as an instructor for the National Cave Rescue Mission. The expert caver was helping lead an international caving expedition when he started suffering intestinal problems that rapidly progressed into life-threatening bleeding and vomiting, the New Jersey Initial Response Team said in a statement.
The Georgia prosecutors in U.S. Donald Trump case has accused a Republican congressman of interfering in a state criminal matter, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported on Thursday. Femi Willis, the district attorney in Georgia's Fulton County, made the allegation in a letter to Representative Jen Jonan, a staunch Trump ally who heads the U.S. House of Representatives Judiciary Committee, the newspaper reported. Trump was indicted in Georgia last year on charges including conspiracy to overturn his 2020 election laws. Jonan announced it probe in an August 2024 letter to Willis in which he questioned her motivation in bringing the case. Requests document on her office use of federal funds and asked whether she coordinated with the Georgia Department. In her letter, which the newspaper published on its website, Willis said allegations that the prosecution is politically motivated were unfounded and that the U.S. constitutional law permits her to ignore this request. Donald Trump may seek to move the Georgia criminal case in which he is accused of conspiracy to overturn its 2020 U.S. election laws from the state to federal court, a potentially more favorable venue for the former president, this lawyer said in a court filing of this Thursday. Several of the Trump's 18 co-defendants, including his former White House Chief of Staff, Mark Dowell, will file petition to move the case to federal court since he has been charged last month following the investigation led by the Fulton County District Attorney Femi Willis. Trump and the front-runner of the Republican nominations to face Democratic President Joe Biden in the 2024 election has denied wrongdoing and pleaded not guilty, as have the rest of the defendants. Trump and the other defendants were indicted on charge and having lawfully pressured Georgia election officials to overturn Biden's election victory in the state. Steve Shadon, a lawyer for Trump, wrote in a one-page court filing, President Trump may be notified the court that he may seek removal of his prosecution to federal courts. Federal courts could be more favorable for Trump because he would face a more political diversity jury pool than in Fulton Court, and the Democratic household. A federal trial would also allow him to argue that he is immune from the prosecution for action he took as part of his official duties as president. Such a move, however, would still involve a trial prosecuted by Willis under Georgia state law. A judge sentenced the 70s show star Danny Masterson to 3 years in life in prison on Thursday, September 7th, for the rape of 2 women 2 decades ago. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Charlinia F. Omeldo handed down the sentence to the 47-year-old Masterson after hearing statements from the woman about trauma they experienced and suffered caused by the disturbing memories in the years since. The actor, who has been in custody since May, sat in court wearing a suit. Masterson watched the woman without visible reaction as they speak. When they raped me, "You stole from me," said one woman from Masterson, was convicted of raping in 2003. That's what rape is, the theft of the spirit. You are pathetic, disturbance, and completely violence. The world is better off with you in prison. The other woman, Masterson, was found guilty of raping, said he has not shown any remorse or for the pain and the cause. She said, "The judge, I know he belongs behind bars for the safety of all the women he came in contact with. I am so sorry. I am so upset. I wish I reported him sooner to the police." The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, which is trying to recruit more Russians on spies, has released a video targeting Moscow officials with an appeal to tell the truth about the system it said is reading the line psychopaths. CIA Director Williams Bond said in July that disaffection among those Russians over the war in Ukraine was created a rare opportunity to recruit spies, and the CIA was not letting it pass. The agency released a video in Russia entitled "Why I Made Contact with the CIA for Myself" on social media, which showed what is clearly supposed to be a Russian official walking through the snow of what looks like a Russian city. "I insisted to everyone that it was unscrupulous to distort the truth in report, but those who rose through the rank were those who did that very thing," the voiceover said in Russian, "before I believe that the truth has some value." The video show has the actor playing a Russian official entering the Russian government building and show his past about the double-headed eagle of Russia. And today we are going to be having this conversation about Moscow legalize of abortion. And with me in the studio is an international affairs analyst, Charles Kane. Raymond Kane Butter. Thank you so much for joining me, Raymond.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you on set. Let's look at our story for today. Women's rights activists in Latin America has long looked at the United States as a model in their decades-long struggle to chip away at the abortion restriction in their highly religious countries. But after the history, Mexican Supreme Court ruling decriminalized abortion on the federal level, some think U.S. activists should now turn to their counterparts south of the border as they navigate a post-Roe v. Wade reality. In Mexico, we have a lot of experience, said Rebecca Ramos, a lawyer and the director of the GRIA, the organizations behind the Mexican court cases. And given the current situation in the United States, it's something we can share with them. Latin America is in the midst of what comes to know as the green wave, as countries like Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina has knocked down major abortion restrictions in the recent years. For decades, green has been emblematics of Latin American abortion rights movements, which took hold in the 1980s in Argentina, a country that until recently has some of the regions restricts prohibitions. Argentina's women activist Susana Carisotti said they originally proposed adopted the color of the cause in 2003 as the way of changing the narratives about these issues. Now we have seen this one that is coming from Mexico. American women's rights group are against abortion decriminalization. On September 6, 2023, Mexico's Supreme Court legalized abortion nationwide 2 years ago after ruling that abortion was not a crime in the state. And in the city, this was called in yesterday that it is being legalized. And looking at this, the abortion nationwide 2 years ago, after ruling that abortion was not a crime in the northern state, we are talking about Aguascalientes. The Supreme Court wrote on social media, that's on Twitter, on X, formerly known as Twitter, they wrote that the legalized system that criminalized abortion in the federal penal court is unconstitutional because it violates the human rights of women and people with their ability to gestate. And I'm wondering why, before even looking at what I'm actually wondering, do you think that this is a very good decision, legalizing abortion in a state? Because it seems it will push young ladies, young men to go extreme. What do you think about this decision by Mexico? Even though they are not the only one that have legalized abortion. We have a country like Argentina. We have other countries that have been mentioned there. But this one just came in yesterday. The ruling, the court has finally decided that abortion has been legalized in not all parts of, not everywhere in Mexico. That, according to them, they're going to take it one state at a time. What do you think about this decision?
It's a very landmark decision because knowing the antecedents of Mexico as a strong Catholic nation, in fact, it's the second largest Catholic nation on earth. So it's going to be a very huge decision for the Justice Department to be able to pull off, and it begins sensitization towards the reproductive rights of women, and I think it was pushed towards protecting rape victims and also minor children, minor people underage that were raped too, and still had to. Their health are in danger if they do not remove the fetus in them. So it was more from a medical perspective than a libertine permission to go and get pregnant and remove the baby if you feel like it was not like it's not like a plaything. It was more from a medical perspective, in case of rape victims that could not go ahead with the trauma of having a baby for their rape, for the rapist. And also to protect minors that has fallen into this circumstance. I think that's where the legal department focused on more when they put up this law. So it wasn't more from a leisure perspective.
But now, as it stands now, it's not just about the legal. It's not about legality. From the legal department anymore. This is something that has been, the freedom of abortion has been given
by the court.
Yes.
That's what I mean by the legal department.
And the moment this was pronounced yesterday, according to the stories we had quite a number of people going to the therapist to get something to terminate the pregnancy. Don't you think this is going to cause a lot of harm than good? Yes, we know that most nations are coming up with this idea of abortion so that they can reduce population. But looking at the fact that one can just walk into a chemist and I want to do abortion, and you don't have any shame about it, you are not feeling any bad about it. Don't you think this is going to damage their future? It's not about now. When you are not married, there's one thing about beautiful thing that, you can do anyhow you like. But when you remove all the eggs
you cannot have legal abortions, and America is going way back, and like we are banning abortions nationally.
But what negative effect do you think this will have in the society as a whole?
Yes, you know, I think Mexico is shifting from the religious perspective of being a nation to being a secular nation, because I know as times and seasons change, so do people change a bit. You know what I'm saying?
Are you telling me that this has a lot to do with religion?
No, I'm trying to say that the most of the people that live in Mexico are not so keen on religion right now. Many of them are now secular. Many of them are even atheists. Many of them do not really believe in Christianity. They have other belief systems. And that would make it easier for them to take those kind of decisions, not from a Christian perspective.
Anyways, you have heard it from our guest. We hope that, anyways, I don't know whether it's a welcome development or it's not a welcome development, but let's see if other countries will adopt this kind of development or if they won't. And again, let's put our fingers across to see if the court will go back on whatever decision they have taken, looking at the fact that we have groups of women in the country coming out and say, no, they are not comfortable with this decision as it's going to be destructive to humanity. This is how much we can take on today's International Tit Bits. Thank you so much, Raymond, for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, our viewers, for being out there. In case you miss out in any of the stories, you have platforms for you to follow. You can join us on Facebook and YouTube at Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok at Atlantic TV Network 1, Twitter at Atlantic TV Network, or you can watch us live on our website at atlanticnetwork.tv. Do remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Thank you for watching and continue to stay connected on ATM Socials. I am Immaculata Jacob Erekana.